Welcome everybody to a Delco Nerd Network podcast. I'm your host Anthony Ragucci, and here with a few friends from the Delaware County area, we get in the basement and we talk about a certain topic. Today's topic, the great superhero game Drought. Here to discuss, as always, the triple threat, Chris Trio.
Gooch. I'm super excited. You know why?
Why?
Because we're doing this live right now. This is the first time we've ever done a podcast live. Thank you guys so much for being with us here today.
Second time. First time
true.
for you.
I'm sorry. First time for me. Gooch did do one for us down at Too Many Games last year while I was indisposed.
Yeah, another local con.
And you did a fantastic job. I got to give you credit. But here we are. We're here to talk about superhero video games, which, you know, it's funny because we say the great superhero game Drought, and like that's kind of not true. There have been a lot of superhero video games, but there haven't been a lot of really good ones, to be honest.
And I think when you say really good, like really good, I mean, our two main ones are Spider-Man and the Arkham series. And then you could probably pick and choose which Arkham series games you like if you really want to get down to it. But like besides those two series, like we were kind of looking like what's come out over the last like 10 years. And, like really since like comic book stuff has been really mainstream.
I'd even say like post the Arkham series.
Yeah, like there really hasn't been a lot. So, and this was your topic idea, and you know, I was kind of thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty apt.
Right.
Like once you sit and think about it, it's like, yeah, there is kind of a drought going on for some reason. It's, you know, you would think with the MCU and DC stuff going on, you'd think that they would be making more games, or even games that tie into the universe and stuff, but they haven't. I mean, we'll talk about this later, but James Gunn has mentioned that he wants to make games within the new DCEU. Besides him saying that on a camera, that hasn't happened yet. We've heard nothing about that, so it's going to be pretty interesting to see if that goes anywhere, if that comes to fruition, if we'll see some tie-in between a game and then a movie or a show or whatever.
I do think one of the main issues you run into also is like licensing issues, like the cost. Because there was like the Sony leak, the Insomniac leak a while ago, and it showed how much they had to pay just to be able to use the Spider-Man name. And I can't remember the exact number, but it's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So when you're going through those licensing fees, I can see that as kind of a hurdle maybe for some of these places. But I don't know. Like the Arkham series did such a good job. Obviously, it like evolved in such a organic way from that from Arkham Asylum to that more open world of City to then introducing the Batmobile, which I know people aren't the biggest fan of somewhat in Arkham Knight, but it's grown on me a lot, and I do think that is like the next evolutionary step to go in that series. But what was before Arkham, Gooch? It was a bunch of movie tie-ins, right?
Yeah, so we have all our movie tie-ins. I think everyone loves like the Spider-Man games, Spider-Man 2 specifically.
Those were the best ones probably at the time, I would say.
Yeah, and then there's like a few others. You know, Superman 64 is an example of a bad one. There's a ton of. It's funny. Like I'm pretty sure Spider-Man might be the only game. It might be the only superhero with its own like. We're just doing a Spider-Man game. This isn't tied to anything. Web of Shadows.
Well, true. Yeah, aside from the movie tie-ins.
Yeah, and it was just strange. But like Batman doesn't have that. The animated series.
That's not true. There was a Batman Begins game. I remember playing it vividly.
But it's a movie. But it's like a movie tie-in. But
it is like Chris Nolan's Batman. Yeah.
No. I'm saying like the opposite. Like it's not tied in.
I think it is technically a tie-in game. Like
no.
I'm confused now.
I'm saying like the Spider-Man games, like Web of Shadows, they're just their own thing.
Correct.
But everything else, like there's animated series tie-in games that are pretty bad.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's like there was the Amazing Spider-Man one way back on GameCube that I think you could play as like Venom too and stuff like that. That was pretty good.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Spider-Man was the one you would just see all the time. X-Men. I mean,
those
were
Origins Wolverine game.
Well, so that's a game that has. I don't know if you guys have played that X-Men Origins Wolverine game. It has no business being that good. Like it's an incredible game. It's weird because I think there's actually two releases for it technically. There's one that was like the Uncaged edition, which was on the next gen consoles that like included blood and gore.
Is Nick Cage in that?
No, he's not. Sadly, he's on the cover. Uncaged. But yeah, no, there was like some insane like physics with tearing away like your body. It would like grow back and you'd see like the skin peel away and the bone. It was an incredibly good game for the time, especially being before and being a tie-in game and all that stuff.
Another weird one that I was like, I guess we kind of have to count it, right? Marvel vs. Capcom.
Sure.
It's not like your typical superhero tie-in, but I feel like that game, especially NBC 1 and 2, are like just really iconic.
Right.
Probably less for the superhero stuff, more for the fighting, and I guess the oddity of the crossover, you know, and it stinks. NBC has kind of really fallen into obscurity. I think, what was it, Infinity Gauntlet or Infinite? Yeah, it was pretty poorly received. I remember playing that demo, especially because we played a lot of NBC3 together.
That's true.
And that demo just didn't hit.
I don't even think I played it, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember playing it. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not getting this.
And I mean, and then you have like examples like Superman 64, which is like almost mythical
trash.
in the way of like, that's a terrible, awful game. I've seen like, you know, gameplay of it, but God only knows what that plays like now. And I mean, I don't know, you did have like a bunch of other stuff kind of pre-Arkham, but yeah, it was mostly your movie tie-ins that weren't really anything to skulk at. I mean, Web of Shadows is very good. I don't know if you...
There's another one, right?
Shattered Dimension?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. That's more like linear though.
That's like,
but it's still it's actually a really good game.
That's like Spider-Man 2099's in that, right?
Right,
Yeah.
Noir, all of them. Yeah, you go.
Yeah.
It's pretty good from what I remember.
Before Multiverse was cool, now it's like a bit tiring, I gotta admit.
It's true, it's everywhere. Oh man. But and then yeah, I mean we kind of got to the Arkham series then, which I think really did show a lot of companies that you can just make something yourself. Like it doesn't have to be a tie-in, it doesn't have to like be a movie adjacent type deal. Like I said before, it just evolved so organically, and they did an amazing job of building their own like DC universe, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, especially they're like Batman mythos to a degree. And you can tell it's like super heavily inspired, I feel like, at least, not even just besides the names or like the voice actors, but by the animated series.
Yeah, I would say animated series, and then Tim Burton,
Yeah.
Tim Burton's Batmans, and you know, how can you go wrong by casting the animated series people? Like,
I mean, it's too good.
one point I'm gonna make later, like, you know, when we're talking about the games that are coming out, is like these iconic characters, and you know, Kevin Conroy is iconically Batman, Mark Hamill iconically Joker, and then, you know, we kind of see versions of different characters like Marvel's Avengers, the one that just came out the game. None of those characters are iconic, like in any sense of the imagination. You know, not to discredit any of those voice actors, but it is like the Avengers of voice acting all of the Avengers, and it's not that they're bad or anything, but it's just like, yep, there's Troy Baker, and Nolan North, and Laura Bailey, and Travis Willingham. It's like everyone you would think, and I think most of them have actually played some of those roles before.
For sure. And I think that's an issue you run into more as us, people who play a lot of video games. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
If you're someone who pays attention
Laura
and knows
Bailey
these voices.
is easy to pick out.
Because you'll point out voices to me even sometimes. You're like, that's this same voice. I'm like, oh, it is.
Yeah.
I would not have known. But that can get a little annoying. And it is, I think they started off with a bit of an edge just by having Conroy and in on those.
And then Paul Dini being involved in the writing of it. Yeah.
No, that's
who
so true. He
wrote
wrote
the animated series.
I didn't even realize, I've been playing through the Arkham series again, like these past couple months. I'm on Night right now. And yeah, I didn't realize Paul Dini like wrote Arkham Asylum, which I was like, oh, that makes total sense. But yeah, just a fantastic game. And I felt like that kind of showed like, oh, we can do this. And you know, here comes the floodgates. Everyone's going to be doing this. And then
Not really.
there's nothing for a while until, like, you know, we start getting things like Marvel's Avengers, which we all saw how well that went. And it sucks because I think the idea of that game is pretty solid. And I think if you took your time to build that out, it could have been something very interesting and cool. But it just was the same map over and over, with you just fighting waves of enemies.
Well, the campaign just seemed like totally separate from like the games as a service model, right? So we have Marvel's Avengers by Crystal Dynamics in that pocket, and Rocksteady's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which is even more live service. Like, you can tell that like something happened when they were developing Marvel's Avengers, and they were like, oh, like, we're gonna do a narrative campaign game, great, and like the campaign's great, and then the game turns into the live service, let's make the money kind of thing, and it's like,
get the battle pass.
Okay, cool, but like, no, you know,
that's not what I'm
and
looking
then they didn't close down the servers, but it's in like, you know, they're done.
It's weirdly, I think
everything's free.
And I do think they made it available offline, that's another thing that really annoys me, especially with Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. It's like you have to have a connection to the internet always. Which, listen, I get it. It's 2024. We all probably have an internet connection. but it's the principle of like, I can't just get this game and play it and not have to worry about any kind of ancillary thing, especially considering how they pitched it, because they did not want to say live service. I feel like
no,
they were
with
doing
either
their
of those
best.
games.
I think Avengers, they were more willing because it was early on to be like, yeah, this is a live service game where we're trying to make it last. But Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. They were like, it's an online game, and you get a battle pass, but it's not live service. Yeah, I don't know, but you can't have both ways, and I just feel like that's just ultimately the wrong way to go with these games. I don't know. I think that new Avengers like hero shooter actually looks pretty good. I'm surprised.
Yeah, it looks like an Overwatch clone.
Sure. But I think that's what they're going for.
Right now. Yeah,
that's fair.
For sure.
But like Overwatch isn't doing well because of the choices they made, like with implementing new things, right, and going back on promises.
Yeah, I mean, making the sequel kind of really like put a nail in that coffin,
right.
And it's like they like, went back on all these things that they promised with like, oh, like we're gonna do a campaign, and like that was the reasoning for the sequel, and then we're like, well, we're gonna cancel that. We're gonna do your campaign missions. Never mind. Like they just canceled all of it. And it's like, God, Blizzard, like how?
It's not a good look.
Tough to trust. But we've been speaking a lot negatively, and I want to speak a little positively. Obviously, Insomniac's Spider-Man 1, Miles Morales 2. We're getting a Venom game by them.
Well, that's not official yet. That was in like the leaks. So
I would say it.
I mean, there's a good chance, but again, it has not been officially announced.
This is why Avi Arad wanted Spider-Man 3. Like we all want to play a Venom game. Like everyone's gonna pun intended, eat it up.
No, for sure. And I mean, it makes more sense because they did. When I was playing through that and you play as Venom, I'm like, this is cool. What is this for? Like, we just got 5 minutes. Can I do it again? No. Okay. And then when we heard about that leak, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. And I get it. They're pumping millions of dollars into these games. They want to get as much out of that world as they can. So they're like, yeah, screw it. Let's do a Venom game. But the Spider-Man 1, I'm a little more sour on Spider-Man 2. But Spider-Man 1...
Like we talk about on the podcast all the time, like, it's these sequels that come after these great titles. It's like...
It's true.
How do you beat it? How do you, like, where do you go from there? And it's like, you probably do, like, the exact same thing, but a little bit worse. And in my opinion, that's what Spider-Man 2 was. Miles Morales was a much smaller scoped game, and that benefited it.
Definitely.
The fact that it was like, oh, it's like 20 hours, you're in, you're out, you're getting a Miles-focused story. Spider-Man 2 was like, all right, we're going to have them both share the screen here, and you're going to play as both, and we're going to have, like, 2 stories, and it's like, there's a lot going on. It's like, and I don't think it really serviced Miles or Peter that well, but then it's like, it's Peter's story, but like, is it Miles? And it's like, not really.
Again,
like,
we just said we want to get positive, and now we went to this. But I totally agree. And I do think, but still, just on its face.
That core Spider-Man game is fantastic. I mean,
it's amazing.
But that's what I'm saying. It's so good. How do you transcend it?
Well,
it's hard.
I think the issue you run into with Spider-Man that, I think the Arkham series very skillfully avoided was that he's just stuck in New York still. You know what I mean? That you can't really change up that environment that much, and they added on the second island, which was awesome.
Yeah,
but like with
Miles Morales, it was Christmas time.
Exactly. So like with
different.
The Arkham series, you started at the Asylum, then you had Arkham City, and then you had full Gotham. It's a very like organic and progression that makes sense, and it's tougher to do that with Spider-Man because you do need those tall buildings and stuff for the traversal. But I think that's when you lean into, okay, now let's make traversal really in depth and thoughtful and fun, and that's where I feel like you kind of have to go with it.
Yeah, I guess I would say it'd be harder with like, pretend we didn't have Arkham. Like, where would you start? Oh, it's going to be in Gotham, right? You would think every game would be in Gotham, but I'm curious. I would imagine it was like a money thing and like a scope thing. It's like, okay, like doing Gotham is a bit too ambitious.
Right.
We need to start smaller. And I guess they could like look at, it's like, okay, like, Arkham Asylum, can we do a game?
Which is like a very notable location also, so it works.
Right.
It makes sense.
If you think about it, it's like, okay, we can like make this asylum into like a combat arena.
No, absolutely.
I guess it's kind of how you have to approach it. It's a bit, it's. I haven't played Arkham Asylum. I've only played Arkham Knights.
I get how he has a video game podcast.
So here's my reasoning. I wasn't into superhero stuff as a kid. Like, I don't know, how you guys, if you're the same way, but like once the MCU got pumping out, it's kind of when I started caring, and then I got into DC, and that was when Arkham Knight came out. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play Arkham Knight, and if you listen to the podcast, I'm really weird about the way I consume my games, so I haven't played Arkham yet. I'm like kind of just waiting for the right time to do it on my own accord. Not when like, hey, you should play this game. I'm like, I know everything about it. Like, you know, I know it's good. I played it, like, and I played Arkham Knight. I know the whole story, but it's just like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. I'm not necessarily like itching to go back. There's just so many games.
There is, and I do think that's a prime. We do like throwback reviews for video games too, a series for that, and I feel like that is a prime candidate for that. So maybe one day we'll get to it. I don't know why I just started replaying all of them. It has been. I mean, all those games still hold up. Arkham Asylum still holds up beautifully, especially with the remaster.
Yeah, you do. I know why. It's because Suicide Squad killed the Justice League.
Correct. I'm sorry. I needed to cleanse my palate.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. That was just.
But I mean, a few other gems in here. I mean, we have on our list. Injustice. Oh my God.
Fantastic.
What a come out of nowhere thing that was like, yeah, you know what?
Started its own comic series too.
Again, like, you know, kind of like, it's funny, we're still in DC. Marvel hasn't done this, where except for Spider-Man, but you know, I guess when Wolverine comes out, that'll change because I think they're in the same universe. But you know, Injustice or NetherRealm's like, okay, we're gonna do a DC fighting game, and then we're gonna do a tie-in comic, and that tie-in comic is gonna be like one of the best comics like DC has like ever put out, and it is really good.
I need to read it.
I hope we get Injustice 3. I'd be really disappointed if NetherRealm just kind of decided to.
I'd be very surprised.
If we get it?
No, if we didn't get it.
Okay.
I just can't see them skipping out on that. But to move on to the Marvel side of it again here, I think one that is severely underrated, and if you haven't played it, for God's sakes, please go play it, is the Guardians of the Galaxy game. It is. It's so funny because we saw trailers
no
for
right
that.
being that good.
It didn't. We saw trailers for it, and I was like, "This looks weird. You only play as Star-Lord. I kind of want to play as maybe Drax too or something. What are we doing here? Like, this seems like the prime candidate for maybe a multiplayer like team game."
Right.
And we're like, "Okay, well, the gameplay looks okay," and we got it, and man, it's so good. Like, it has, like I said, has no right being that good. It takes the Guardians in a direction that feels different from the movies, but of course, like, familiar. It doesn't have the Avengers problem where it's like, well, honey, I want the Avengers, and they're like, well, honey, we have the Avengers at home, and it's like these guys, and it's like, no, that's not what I want. that's not like you're Cap in this like weird SWAT gear and everything. I don't know, it just didn't feel right. Whereas like those felt like very distinct versions of those characters, and a very interesting story.
Yeah, and I guess the bad part about it is it didn't sell well, you know, according to Square Enix. Like it didn't do what it needed to do, and it was like, what, you know? I guess
again, I just don't think it showed well. I really do.
No,
unfortunately,
because like everyone was like really skeptical about it. I mean, like you just said, we were both like, this looks like just like knockoff Guardians. Like, you know, we're trying to be MCU but not, and it's so funny how the opposite turned out to be. But it didn't. As good as it is, and as much as we like it, it's still not Arkham. It's still not Spider-Man. It's not getting up to there, and it won't. Like, I don't think we're gonna get a sequel to that game. I mean, Square has kind of gone their separate ways with Adios Montreal and a lot of their Western developers.
Yeah.
You know, they're not in cahoots with any of those guys anymore. So
yeah, they just weren't making money, unfortunately.
I guess they're the ones who had the property rights, and it's
so Marvel will always, I assume, own the rights to that game, like the IP of it, because they own Guardians.
Right.
So I assume like it's something in between, like where Idios and them kind of have a hand in it, but ultimately probably Marvel does, I would assume. But what about Midnight Suns, Gooch? You played this.
Oh, Midnight Suns. That another gem, but again, it's not for everybody. So it's not gonna get to this S tier game that everyone talks about, and you know.
What type of game is it again? I can't remember the name.
XCOM.
Yeah,
XCOM, okay.
If anyone's played XCOM, it's kind of like this strategic card-based, tactical turn-based thing.
Right.
It's really fun, and it's kind of like I kind of like equate it to like Persona in a way, because you have like your home base, and you're talking to all your characters, and you're being friendly with everybody, and you know, and like there's like, it's not just like, okay, we have Captain America and Captain Marvel and Wolverine, but we have Nico Minoru from the Midnight Suns. We have Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, and there's a few other like miscellaneous like C-list characters that I'm like, this is good. I like this exposure for them. I mean, we had the Runaways
Right.
On Hulu, and I think that's the only I've never seen that, but that's like the only version of like that's like pre-Midnight Suns kind of thing. 'Cause some of those characters like pour into that because of their. The Midnight Suns is like like spellcasters and the wizards and the witches of the MCU.
That makes sense.
Even
like
though
the Justice League Dark, if you will.
Yeah, that kind
Everyone's
of thing.
shooting a magic
Even though
bolt.
Batman's there for some reason, like Captain America's joined the fight.
Well, he's pretty dark. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, no, it is funny.
In a different kind of way.
I still need to watch that animated movie. I heard it's pretty good.
Check out Midnight Suns if you haven't. But again, it's good. It's come out, but it's not reaching these huge strides that I feel like the gaming industry kind of needs for someone to be like, oh, like there are a lot of superhero games. Like it's not for everyone. I understand that, and I don't necessarily think they need to approach it differently. It's just kind of like, how do you sell it to the masses? And I don't know if you're like kind of shooting your foot when it comes to that. I mean, but we've seen games like Baldur's Gate 3, which is typically a very niche genre in terms of Dungeons and Dragons, and just the type of games it is with like turn-based RPG, and that's Game of the Year. So like I don't know how that works.
And I think we're kind of speaking to at this point like the problem with the gaming industry in general, that like all of these companies see the major cash cows in these online as a service games. They want a continuously printing money machine that just can only exist, I think, personally, for a few games, because there's not enough mind share to go around. You have like GTA Online makes a ton of money. Fortnite obviously is just, I don't know if that will ever go away at this point.
And to go into the Fortnite of it, I feel like I'm a WB C-suite exec. I want a Fortnite. That's what they're saying.
Every exec, yeah.
That's why a Suicide Squad Kill of the Justice League is made. That's why
67 players
and Marvel's Avengers is made. It's like they're seeing the money that is on the table with the gaming industry, and they also want to be sitting at that table eating the same meal that Epic Games is making.
You want to know what they did? They went into a nice boardroom, and they had a blackboard or a whiteboard, and they said MCU plus live service equals lots of money, and then they just wrote money.
And they were like, yes.
And they're like, this makes sense. These are two things that make a lot of money and do well.
Who would be a good dev to do that?
Yeah.
Rocksteady. You guys have done a lot of single-player narrative games, right?
Multiplayer online.
You guys, you'll do it.
Well, and I was actually just watching a video the other day. That whole Suicide Squad game went through, like, WB Montreal was working on it for a while, and then it got switched over to Rocksteady, so that's a whole shit show and a half. But I will talk about the ugly redheaded stepchild a little bit. That is Arkham Origins. I gotta say, people I feel like lately it's been
Roger Craig Smith is here. Don't make him come down.
Is he here?
Yeah.
It's so funny that he's not. I'm sorry, I love you, Roger. You're great as Ezio, but your Batman's terrible. It's just too like that. He's Solid Snake. What's going on here? I don't know. It's just too much. But that game, I do think gets a lot of credit rightfully now. Like it's pretty good, but I'm going back and replaying it. It definitely is leagues below the other three, sadly. Like I don't know. It's like pizza. It's gonna be fine. Usually you can eat it. Pizza's pizza, but bad pizza is still fine pizza. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's okay. But to get more post Arkham again, I do think that is the major issue we're running into of like multiplayer versus single player and wanting to print that money machine.
And we haven't talked about Gotham Knights, which is like half a live service game, half a single. You know,
like what do we do? I don't really want
a multiplayer game, and it's like the premise of Gotham Knights. For those who don't know, it's Batman's dead, which is funny because he dies in Arkham Knight, so you think it would be in the same universe. Nah, not this time.
Yeah.
But he's still dead. And it's Robin, Tim Drake, Jason Todd, Barbara Gordon, and
Dick
Grayson. So yeah, and they, you know,
on its face, great idea.
Batman, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And it plays pretty well. We played multiplayer.
Yeah.
We had like a fun time. But like just the narrative really isn't strong. It's a cool idea, but it seems like this what should have been the game Rocksteady made.
And then they change. I totally agree. And then they change up the miraculous and immaculate thing that is the free flow combat system, and then they go to whatever the hell they're using in that now. Like I still have yet to play. Actually, not Sisu. What's that game that came out? few years ago.
Sifu.
Sifu. Thank you.
Sisu's
Sisu is a
the
movie,
movie.
which is actually a hilarious movie you should watch. But when that came out, I was like, oh, this is kind of matching that. But there really has not been many games to match that hand-to-hand combat. Like by the time you get to Night, the way you have to juggle all these different people and use different gadgets and watch out for different enemy types, you got to be really thinking. And it's like a little dance. But then you move on to freaking whatever Gotham Knights gives us, and it's just like hell. But you know, I do think it's just kind of emblematic to say, like, you know, the Arkham series is still, I think, the greatest example of like this done well.
Yeah, I mean, and, speaking of narrative games, the only other one we have on our list is Telltale's Batman and Guardians. Has anyone played any of those?
Just the Batman.
Batman's good.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I played the Batman stuff. It's interesting. Troy Baker's Batman in that, and the take on Joker is pretty interesting.
It is.
And you know, it's cool, but it's a Telltale game, so like you're not, you know, it's just narrative.
It's very story
focused.
based, yeah. of course.
Right. You're not getting this huge gameplay spectacle. And I never played Guardians. You know, I want to just to see how it is, especially how it, you know, just to, you know, I guess it's kind of bad that I want to compare it. But, you know, see how it holds up. It's like, oh, okay, I've seen the Guardians in the movies and in Adios Montreal's game. Like, how does this compare? And, you know.
I remember seeing a trailer for that and having that same feeling of like, we have Avengers at home. Like, it was like, they took what the event, like they did in the MCU and then just were like, let's just tweak it slightly, but not too much because that might put people off, but not too little. So then it just looks like we're just doing an MCU game. You got to make a decision. You know, like and I think that's kind of one of the major issues I remember with that game anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but I feel like the key to success is the narrative focus. It's not the multiplayer, it's not the cash. It's just like, hey, can we tell a good story within a video game? Yes. Okay, let's do it.
Right.
Because that seems to be what Spider-Man started as, and it ended up well. I mean,
right.
it's getting much bigger. Arkham, it took like 4 games to be like, okay, like we're finally gonna go outside of of Gotham and Batman, and yeah, remember the bad guy quipping about Superman. We're gonna like do that, but you know they didn't. It just seems
there were just light references. There would be like things like a Central City poster up with like very clearly Flash imagery on it or something like that.
Yeah, and it just seems like once they got there, the whole thing kind of like crumbled.
I mean, dude, they worked on their new one for. That was well, I don't think that game was in development for 8 years, but there was an 8-year gap between when their last game came out and this one. And,
and everyone was like, "What's
going
on?
on? Superman game? Can I have something?"
Yeah,
Rocksteady,
remember the
please?
Superman game leaks that came out?
Apparently are not real at all, too, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that was like shortly after Night came out.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, everyone's like, "Oh, this is their next game."
And then they had Metropolis as the setting for Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League, so people were like, "Oh, well, maybe they just repurposed this from the game." But I don't know. But thankfully, I do think we have some good things coming up on the horizon.
Yeah, we do. It was so funny when we were like prepping to do this, and we're like, what is coming up? It's like, oh, like once I like put it down on a page, like we do have a lot of like heavy hitters in here. Did you want to start us off with
Sure, why not?
Insomniac
So
stuff?
obviously, Venom, we were talking about that. Like I said, still hasn't been announced, but it was part of that big leak that Insomniac suffered a little while ago. Going to be like, I'm assuming, like a Miles Morales type experience, like a 1.5, 2.5, if you will. And then Wolverine, of course, which is going to be big.
Yeah.
We did see some leak stuff from that too, as well.
Yeah, I mean, everything we're talking about here is in
on this
the
top
leaks.
part,
You
yeah.
know what's happening. I mean,
Again, it
I
could
don't wanna-
technically change.
Yeah,
I'd
but
like to give that disclaimer.
It is happening.
Yeah.
I guess, quote unquote.
Spider-Man 3 is, of course, coming at some point, and then they actually had an X-Men game on there too. So
In 2035.
Yeah, which is
like 10 years away.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and it does kind of suck to see Insomniac just become like a Marvel,
The Marvel
house
machine.
only.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I kind of get it because like Ratchet and
Spider-Man
Clank.
1?
Well, Spider-Man 1 did amazing, but also like their own IPs and stuff like Ratchet and Clank that did not sell very well.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
Rift Apart.
Yeah, and which sucks because
yeah.
if you guys haven't played Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, play that. It's very good. I love that game.
Yeah, one of the true like, oh, I can see the next gen. in
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah.
And they do it again in Spider-Man 2. It's the time traveling part. Remember?
Oh, right.
When, I think you're playing as Miles.
The
with
portal,
Black
yeah,
Cat.
the portals, right.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, there it is. We gotta reuse it.
Yeah, that's actually very cool.
I didn't mind that at all.
No,
That was
it's funny. I actually didn't even think about it. But and then next up, we have some stuff on the DC side. This one we heard about a while ago, but Really,
like Game Awards?
I want to say, like
Probably?
even prior, I feel like it's been around for like 2 years at this point, maybe even 3, at least the announcement.
Yeah.
Was Monolith's Wonder Woman game.
So Monolith, for those who don't know, did the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games, the trademark
Fantastic, yeah.
Nemesis system, which essentially, for those who don't know, it's kind of like, okay, I have an army, and this army is like this living, breathing creature where like a grunt from like the lowest rank can become like the general, and he has a name and characteristics.
And they remember you if you interact with them.
Yeah,
you know.
and it's like, how does that even work with any superhero? Like, very interesting concept. I mean, I hope they use it because it's a mechanic we haven't really seen used since Shadow.
You would have thought, and I think because they actually patented it.
Yeah,
WB,
it's like
which
that's why
is
it's a
wild. I
trademark.
don't know you could do that with game mechanics.
Look at
like,
Nintendo.
but like, can
guarantee does a lot of that.
you can't copyright platforming.
I don't know, can you?
I don't think so. I think they would have done it by now, personally. But yeah, fun fact actually, that system actually was first going to be introduced in a Batman game. We found out about this recently. Did you remember this? We posted it in the Discord.
You can join our Discord.
Yeah, if you guys want to join our Discord, a lot of fun in there. There was a Nolan tie-in game that was in alpha. There's footage that was put out about it, and it was set in the Nolanverse. It was going to come out before
Did
even
Jason
Arkham.
Schreier report this?
No, I don't think so. I think someone just put up it was leaked, or it was out of copyright or whatever, so they someone could post it. But yeah, it was going to be set in the Nolanverse. You were going to use the Tumblr and all that. There was some pre-alpha footage. It looks very janky, of course, because it's very early on. But yeah, that's where it was going to start. And then they didn't end up using it. And that ended up becoming Arkham Asylum. And then they ended up using that system later, which is so funny.
I don't think I saw that.
Yeah,
Well, maybe
I think you did comment on it, but so many things go in that.
And
that
I
you
just
don't know.
totally
Yeah, it just went over the head.
It's been a busy week.
But yeah, so that's coming out, and then also we just got the first trailer for this. This is from Amy Hennig, who did all the old Uncharted games. Well, she stopped on 3, I believe. It's her Marvel 1943. Sorry, Skydance Media's. This is a terrible name. Skydance Media's.
I just put the dev
Marvel.
at the beginning so we know.
No, I know. I'm talking about even just the title. Marvel's 1943 Rise of Hydra. This is like a.
I'm gonna come back at you.
No, yeah.
I think Marvel 1943 is a pretty cool name. I mean, the hyphen I get because it's like, well, what is it? But yeah, so it's Black Panther and Captain America in like a World War II game.
Yeah.
I think this sounds intense.
It looks pretty sweet. I mean, we only got
it-
a CG trailer.
It's such a
or not
weird
CG.
pull because I mean I feel obviously when we talk about World War II in games, it's Call of Duty for the most part or shooters. So seeing a Marvel game sort of take that premise and be like, oh, like okay, we're
The
gonna
historical aspect.
right,
especially.
and not do this greater world thing. I mean, like we have the Wakandans and obviously like what's pre-Shield?
Howling Commandos.
No, well yes, but like what's
what the
what's Shield before it's Shield?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway,
I know what you're talking
yeah, it's Shield before it's Shield. It's like
Got it.
S something S. I don't know.
I thought it was Shield.
No, it's not Shield to start out with. But it's
Agent Carter and all that.
I
Yeah,
see. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
yeah. So it's pre all that, and so I was like, yeah, this is a pretty cool idea. Kari Payne playing Black Panther, which is pretty cool.
Dude, you know I'm always a sucker for a period piece, so give it to me.
Yeah. I think we can get some really iconic characters out of this. Like seeing Captain America in World War II, it's like we've really only seen that like once.
Yeah,
and
only
it was the movie.
Aside from the comics, of course, but yeah, exactly.
In a I guess in a what I'm seen recently in like a
Live action is
seeing
setting.
movies,
Yeah. No, I think it is the way to go, absolutely. And I'm very curious to see what it is. It's going to be super narrative heavy, which I'm excited about. Amy Hennig has done some great work in video games, so the pedigree is there, if that's even a word. But I'm very excited. I think it is. And then after that, we have a couple more Marvel games. We got Motive's Iron Man too, as well. They're doing an Iron Man game, which has been in development for a little bit.
No next to nothing about that.
No, we just know that it's happening. Same
happening.
with the Black Panther game that Cliffhanger game is doing. Or Cliffhanger game.
Yeah, when you put that in there, I was like,
He's like, what is this
about?
game? I'm like, no, it exists.
Yeah, EA has a new studio, and they're doing a Black Panther game, and I think we know literally nothing else about it.
Yeah. Same with the Iron Man game, which we don't have any time frame on those really. What's this? Oh, Marvel's Rivals is.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier.
Right. That's
an
Overwatch
game.
clone-ish.
The only problem is that's it's a Chinese dev. So it's like, okay, and NetEase, it's like, the politics of that, it's like, okay.
With like the governmental involvement, you mean, right?
Yeah.
No, I know, it can get...
It's like, okay,
right.
We see what's going on here. But
again, you can't have any... I can't consume anything with a clean conscience these days.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not saying I'm trying to be
for
clean.
sure. Oh, no, absolutely. But no, that is interesting. I don't know much about that. Like I said, I think that leans itself to that. I think that could turn out to be very good, especially if it's free to play. I'll pick it up and try it out. I mean, why not? But after that, we got the James Gunn DCEU games, which we talked about. We know nothing about that. I really don't think we'll see anything come out of that for the next like 5 years.
I mean, that was like barely an announcement, and I think it's just going to be interesting to be like, what can that be?
Right.
What does, and even like, I think Marvel should be looking at what they're doing. It's like, what does a tie-in game with a predominantly movie universe? What is that? What
Can I be honest with you?
How does that character cross over?
I don't think this is going to happen. It's just to make a game in line at the same time as like a movie. It already takes time enough to make a video game, and shit always happens. It takes 5 years. A movie you film in like 2 years. I just think it would take an incredible amount of planning, in my opinion. Because like, do you think you'd see David Cornsweet or whatever like be Superman in a Superman game? I would love to, but like that's gonna be tough to line
Seems
up.
like a lot of time.
That's what I mean. So I don't know. It's definitely something to think about for sure.
And then our last one here is Arcane's Blade. We got a Blade game. I think, did we know about, we did, it leaked, right?
I think so.
Before the Game Awards,
Yeah.
but, I think we got this, like, awkward little presentation of, like, the two devs coming out. And mind you, Arcane is an Xbox team now.
Yeah.
So they come out and they show us, like, a little teaser trailer for Blade. It's set in Paris. Looks
Right.
awesome. But they're like, they don't confirm it's an Xbox exclusive.
Which is not going on.
And they don't really say anything else. Like, they don't, I guess that trailer would be considered like a cinematic trailer, like not in game.
They told us it's still very early on in development. Like, I think they're like just starting. So first off, why are you telling me? Second off, we'll see what happens when that comes out. I freaking love Arcane. They're one of my favorite studios, period.
Yeah,
Dishonored,
yeah.
Freaking
Prey.
Deathloop, Prey. If you haven't played Prey, for God's sakes, go play Prey. It's so good. They kind of had to do the stupid multiplayer thing with Redfall. I think that's Arcane, a different Arcane though. Like they're both Arcane studios, but there's like Arcane Austin and Arcane.
Arcane Austin did Redfall.
Was something else, but
I guess unfortunately for them.
Unfortunately, indeed.
That came out about a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, this leans right at like first-person view, magic powers, whatever, vampire powers. That leans right into the Arcane formula. I think I think it's going to be a first-person game.
Yeah,
it's going to be similar-ish setup to a Dishonored.
It's third person though, right?
Oh, did they say it's third person?
I'm pretty confident.
You might be right.
I feel like I am, but like I can see the first person, like we have a you know how like Corvo like flips his blade. I can just see Blade flip, like like crouching and like flipping the blade.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, oh yeah,
I mean, it all goes right in. I would actually love to see them do a third person game. I'd be curious to see kind of what they could bring to that kind of mechanic. But Gooch, should we move into the end here?
Yeah. So what do we want to see from this new batch of games, or any games? And you guys are welcome to join in with us for the conversation. We've talked about all this stuff. All these games look great, but we picked 3 things that you want to see. Do you want to like?
Yeah, sure. We'll go back and forth. All right.
Yeah,
so, give me some character-specific mechanics, please. You know what I really loved about Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League? How Captain Boomerang was flying around using his famous weapon, the shotgun. So, like, I don't know what we're doing here, and he's using like some Speed Force type thing.
Yeah,
Harley's
Speed
swinging
Force
around on. She's web swinging everywhere with a grapple hook. What are we doing? What about you, Gooch?
I already said it. Narrative focused.
Right.
Get rid of the multiplayer stuff. Let's stop doing that. Let's hone in and be like, what's the story we can tell? How can we tell this in a really engaging way? The story. I mean, I guess obviously the gameplay is like number 2, but the story has to be centerfold here.
No, absolutely. I think with these games, especially, like they just lean into that in the best way. Of course, for me, the next one's going to be. Don't take me out of the game. One thing I hated about the Spider-Man games, first off, the MJ missions. Why am I playing as Mary Jane Watson in the Spider-Man game? Why am I playing as anyone besides Spider-Man in the Spider-Man game? Second off,
You're telling me you didn't like to ride the bike? With Harry?
I wasn't the
You didn't
biggest
like to ride
fan.
the bike to
I don't know
school?
what it is. But like, it is funny because like I was playing the Arkham games and they just, They have like their little kind of mini games and like you do
I know
your
in Night you
decoding
play
and
as
stuff like
Gordon
that.
for a second.
Yeah, for like a second. But like
Yeah.
it never overstays its welcome. Whereas like in Spider-Man especially is just like the biggest example of this. Like I remember they're talking in an interview. They're like, well, we want to break up the gameplay. Why would you want to play as Spider-Man the whole time? What? It seems so dumb to me. Like all the stuff within the Arkham games fits so neatly. You're Batman while you're doing it, and it just works like incredibly well. Chris, did you put your head up? What's up?
Just saying, when it comes to say maybe DC trying to do something Superman related, that was the big thing when Night came out. Like everyone's thinking, oh, it's gonna be Superman next. But the fact of the matter is too that it's Superman, most invincible person, unless you get Zod or someone.
No, it's tough.
Yeah,
you really got to do some
not
mental gymnastics, but you need to figure that out.
I remember, like, it's same with like the Flash. Like, how do you do a Flash game? He can literally run through everyone. Like,
You make the running the gameplay. You have to make it so that he doesn't mess up while he's doing all this.
What was that in the back? Sonic. Yeah, I mean, like, can he run through people? Can Sonic?
Yeah, yes, that's true.
Canonically run through people.
That's the thing, like with Flash, again, certain people you do start running into these mechanical things where Flash is supposed to be able to perceive everything so quickly that whenever he gets hit, especially in those TV shows back in the day, I'm like, how did you get hit, Flash? But
CW.
Yeah, CW. But yeah, don't take me out of it. Just don't take me out of it.
And I guess my second one kind of goes into that. It's new, never before seen mechanics. I feel like going into what you were saying, like, if we just had this whole new gameplay skew around a character, and we never seen it before, sort of like the Nemesis system, right? That's really just kind of like iconic foreshadow of Mordor and War,
Right.
just because it's trademarked and it's like, oh, that's the system that game is in. And I guess like with like thinking about like Wolverine, it's like, well, like, I think we can all envision what a Wolverine game looks like. But like we were just saying, like, what does a Flash game look like?
Yeah.
What does a Superman game look like? And I feel like it takes a team of really good writers and really good gameplay designers to sit down and be like, okay,
Think their way through it.
yeah, how do we like make Superman not super and it makes sense and it'd be fun? I mean, they even do it in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Like I've seen,
Gets a yellow kryptonite or
they
something.
fight Superman in that. It's like, yeah, we have yellow kryptonite, but it's
They use his famous weakness too, Gooch.
What?
They use his famous weakness to defeat him. Bullets.
Yeah, we're shooting.
I'm sorry, I'm very upset about Suicide Squad. Kill the Justice League
We're
still.
just shooting.
Yeah, we're shooting at Superman. I don't know. Jesus
Okay.
Christ. So now last for me is, I don't know if anyone here watched the CW Flash show.
Or any CW show.
I thoroughly enjoyed those shows. I really did. I grew up on them in a lot of ways, but for God's sakes, don't Team Flash me. Just like when
there's seven.
when
people.
it's like all right, there's like 6 main characters and we got to make sure the side characters have a fully fleshed out thing. And like, don't get me wrong, you need side characters that are fleshed out and that like you care about and that add on to the story. But like, why is MJ helping you take down the symbiote hive at the end of Spider-Man 2?
OP taser.
That's what I mean. Like she's sneaking into this alien hive while both the Spider-Men go off and distract them. That seems rather dangerous to. I don't know. Just like. Focus the story around the character. You know what I mean? And again, like I said, that doesn't mean take away all their side characters. Don't give them agency or anything.
It's just like they don't need to be a part of the team in the physical sort of way.
Yeah, sure.
Like
I
they
don't
can
know. It
be
just
there.
feels- yeah.
Obviously, like we don't have Spider-Man without Gwen or Mary Jane. They're central to his character.
Yeah.
But
Start wrapping up.
it's just like. Why do we
What are
have
we
to
doing?
make Mary Jane fight?
No,
I
don't know.
don't necessarily think so. And last, it's funny, I named pretty much all of mine while I was talking. Having iconic versions of the character. Yuri Lowenthal's Spider-Man, I didn't mention it. That's like iconic. That suit is iconic. Like you're gonna see somebody cosplaying as the 2018 Marvel Spider-Man today at the con. Like for sure. We have it with Arkham, and of course Kevin Conroy's voice talent, and the rest of those animated series people who came into the Arkhamverse are also in there as well. But like from all the games we listed, like none of these people are iconic. Like these teams aren't iconic. Like even if the game's good, like okay, great, I like the Guardians game. It's got good characters and good narrative. But like I would.
You're talking like voice acting wise.
Yes, but like it's the whole thing. It's the way they look.
Sure.
It's the silhouette.
Right.
It's everything. It's like really breathing this life into this character. And
No
like,
Captain America in a SWAT uniform. Right? That's
No
okay.
Captain America in a SWAT uniform.
Okay.
And I don't really think it comes down to voice talent. I think it's really just the writing and the way the game
Completely
creators
agree.
and devs just kind of craft the character. Obviously, like, you know, when the voice actor's given the script, they're just doing their job.
Of course.
It's not necessarily their way.
You're telling me the actor doesn't make all the decisions?
No.
I'm just sending my hate mail to the wrong person. That's rough. No, I'm kidding. But I think we're going to have to wrap it up here, Gooch. This was a great conversation. I got to say thank you all so much for being here. This was very nice. I'll lead us out here, Gooch.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for watching. If you've been watching with us live, I guess we aren't doing this one live, but we usually do record our podcast
Well,
live.
it is live.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
in
We're
person.
live for you guys, but not on Twitch, how we usually are. Twitch.tv/Delco Nerd Network. We're usually streaming there almost every Sunday, I feel like. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Just search Delco Nerd Network on your favorite service. We're on all your favorite social media pages as well, at Delco Nerds on basically everything. Got a Facebook page, Discord channel. Come say hi, hang out. We'd love to have you there. You can even email us your comments, questions, or concerns, delconerds@gmail.com. We'd be happy to get back to you. But for Gooch, I've been Trio, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay nerdy, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Seriously, great stuff.